In a small apartment on Chicago's North Side, Rachel Miller woke up before her alarm clock rang. 5:30 in the morning. Her body had naturally memorized the rhythm of 12-hour shifts at the hospital. In the bed next to her, her 8-year-old son Ethan was still sound asleep. Listening to his peaceful breathing, Rachel quietly slipped out of bed. While making coffee in the kitchen, Rachel organized the day's schedule in her head. Prepare breakfast, take Ethan to school, then begin a long day at the hospital. It had been 2 years since she started raising her son as a single mother, and every day was a battle against time. After her divorce from Michael, she had been supporting her son alone while working as a nurse. It was when Ethan was 3 years old that they discovered he had a severe nut allergy from birth. Right after he tasted a peanut butter sandwich at daycare, hives broke out all over his body and he had difficulty breathing. She still vividly remembered the terror of that day. When she heard the words, anaphylactic shock, from the doctor at the hospital where he was taken by ambulance, Rachel's world changed completely. Since then, managing Ethan's diet had become the center of their lives. Lunch boxes for school, checking menus when eating out, always carrying an EpiPen. Rachel had taken every precaution to protect her son's life. She had explained the situation many times to people around them, seeking their understanding. However, her ex-husband Michael never understood the importance of it. "You're being too neurotic," Michael often said. "When I was a kid, I'd never even heard of allergies like that." He was often behind on child support payments and only came to see Ethan about once a month. Recently, they hadn't been able to reach him at all. Rachel's mother, Dorothy Harris, lived in Miami, Florida. When Rachel got divorced, she declared it was time to enjoy my own life, and had begun various investments using her pension money. During their monthly phone calls, it was always about new investment opportunities or how she was finally going to get rich this time. "How's Ethan?" her mother would ask, but about his allergies she would only say, "You're thinking about it too seriously." She actually saw her grandson only about once a year, and Rachel had complex feelings about the distance with her mother. Ethan wanted to see his grandmother, but Rachel's work schedule and financial constraints didn't allow for trips to Florida. "Mom, I want to see Grandma," Ethan often said. He treasured the birthday cards and occasional small presents sent from his grandmother. Rachel's heart ached at her son's innocent wish, but she could only explain the practical limitations. Work at the hospital was tough, but her colleagues were understanding. Especially the older nurses understood Rachel's struggles as a single mother and sometimes covered her overtime shifts. However, there was still no financial leeway, and the monthly household budget was like walking a tightrope. One evening when Rachel returned home from the hospital, there was a message from her mother on the answering machine. "Rachel, how are you doing? Actually, my investments have been going very well lately. Ethan's birthday is coming up, and I'd like to send him something special. I'll call you soon." Her mother's voice sounded brighter and more cheerful than usual. Rachel felt something was off. It was unusual for her mother to show concern for her grandson on her own initiative. However, imagining Ethan's delighted face, she felt genuinely happy. For her son, affection from his grandmother was precious. The following week, her mother called again. "I already sent the present. Homemade cookies and a toy that Ethan wanted. I'm sure he'll be delighted." Rachel was puzzled by her mother's sudden kindness but was grateful. The next day, Rachel finished her long shift at the hospital and came home exhausted. When Rachel opened the apartment door, Ethan's excited voice echoed. "Mom! A present came from Grandma. I already opened it." In the living room was an open cardboard box with wrapping paper and ribbons scattered around it. Ethan was holding a new Lego set, his eyes sparkling. There were cookie crumbs around his mouth. It arrived before the babysitter Maria left. Maria said, "Ethan looked so happy." Rachel peered into the box. There were homemade cookies in a beautiful tin and an expensive-looking Lego spaceship set. A handwritten note was attached to the cookie tin. To Ethan, cookies filled with Grandma's love. Eat lots and grow big. With love, Grandma Dorothy. Grandma's cookies are so delicious. Ethan said happily. I already ate 3. Rachel smiled as she picked up the cookie tin. Her mother's homemade cookies brought back warm childhood memories. The rich aroma of butter and the sweet flavor of slightly burnt edges. However, something bothered her. Her mother supposedly hadn't been cooking much lately. During phone calls, she had said she was eating out all the time and often complained that cooking is such a hassle. Ethan, are they really delicious? Rachel looked at her son's face. Yes. But. Ethan tilted his head slightly. They're a little bitter. But since Grandma made them, I'll eat them all. Bitter. A small warning bell rang in Rachel's mind. Her mother's cookies had always been overly sweet. Why would there be bitterness? Rachel also picked up a cookie and smelled it. Mixed with the aroma of butter and sugar, there was faintly another scent. It was, like almonds. She felt as if her heart stopped for a moment. Ethan, what do these cookies taste like? Tell me in detail. Sweet, with a buttery taste, and something kind of nutty. They taste like nuts too. Rachel's hands began to tremble. Her mother should have known about Ethan's allergy. She had explained it many times and had even written detailed letters about it. She had emphasized over and over, please never give him any nuts. She looked at the cookie tin more carefully again. It looked rustic and homemade, but there was no ingredient list. No product label either. Usually you would know the ingredients like eggs, flour, butter, sugar, but nothing was written. Mom, what's wrong? Your face is pale, Ethan looked up worriedly. I'm fine, just tired, Rachel answered, trying to stay calm. I should call Grandma to thank her. Rachel took out her cell phone and called her mother's number. However, the phone went to voicemail. This is Dorothy. I can't come to the phone right now. Please leave a message. Mom, this is Rachel. Thank you for the present. But I need to confirm something about the cookie ingredients. Please call me urgently. Rachel tried calling again, but it still didn't connect. The third and fourth times had the same result. Her mother was usually someone who answered the phone immediately. Especially in the evening hours, she should have been home. Ethan was playing with Lego while occasionally eating cookies. Rachel watched her son while feeling her anxiety gradually growing. Could there really be nuts in them? But her mother wouldn't do something so dangerous. Maybe she was overthinking it. Ethan, how many did you eat today? Ethan counted on his fingers. 3, no, maybe 4. They're delicious, so I want to eat more. Rachel took a deep breath. If he had eaten 4 and no symptoms had appeared, maybe it was okay. However, allergic reactions sometimes appear with a delay. With her medical knowledge, she knew this well. Ethan, let's stop eating cookies tonight. We'll have more tomorrow. Why? Ethan made a dissatisfied face. Because if you're too full, you won't be able to eat dinner. Rachel made an excuse and placed the cookie tin on a high shelf. While preparing dinner, Rachel's mind remained unsettled. She was carefully observing Ethan's condition, but so far no unusual symptoms were visible. There was no redness on his skin, and his breathing was normal. During the meal, Ethan chatted cheerfully. About school, playing with friends, and his joy about the present from his grandmother. I want to see Grandma. I want to thank her, he said repeatedly. Let's try calling her on our next day off, Rachel answered, but internally her anxiety about not being able to contact her mother was growing. At night, after putting Ethan to bed, Rachel called her mother again. This time it didn't answer even after 10 rings. She left a message on voicemail too. Mom, this is urgent. Please call me immediately. I need to confirm something about Ethan's allergy. She looked up nut allergy symptoms on the internet again. Sometimes allergic reactions appear several hours after consumption. Especially if consumed in large quantities, delayed reactions could occur. Rachel's anxiety was turning into certainty. Late at night, she called her mother once more. This time it connected to a different number. This number is currently not in service, a mechanical voice announced. Rachel was stunned. When had her mother changed her phone number? Why hadn't she told her? And why had she sent a present at this timing? Looking at Ethan's sleeping face in the bedroom, various questions raced through Rachel's mind. Her mother's story about successful investments, her sudden kindness, the unusual gift of homemade cookies, and the situation where she couldn't be reached. Were all these just coincidences, or was there some other meaning? Still unable to sleep past 3 in the morning, Rachel returned to the living room and picked up the cookie tin again. When she examined the surface of the cookies closely with a flashlight, she could see small particles. They looked like finely crushed nut fragments. Rachel's blood drained from her face. If these were really nut fragments, Ethan had already consumed a large amount of allergens. And tomorrow, a delayed reaction might appear. She hurried back to Ethan's bedside and listened carefully to his breathing. Fortunately, he was still breathing quietly and regularly. The next morning, Rachel greeted the dawn without having slept a wink, carefully observing Ethan's condition. Her son woke up energetically as usual and greeted her with a smile. "Good morning, Mom." At first glance, there seemed to be no changes, but Rachel's experience as a nurse didn't miss the subtle changes. "Ethan, how do you feel? Does anything hurt?" "I'm fine. But can I eat those cookies again from yesterday?" Rachel's heart jumped. "It's breakfast time now. Let's eat cereal first." While preparing breakfast, Rachel decided to carry out what she had been thinking about during the night. She needed to examine the cookies more carefully again. While Ethan was eating cereal, she brought out a magnifying glass and observed the surface of the cookies under magnification. What she saw there confirmed her worst fears. On the surface of the cookies, almond particles had clearly been mixed in. And not just a small amount. It seemed like quite a lot of almond flour had been used. "Ethan," Rachel's voice was trembling. "How many cookies did you say you ate yesterday?" Ethan stopped his spoon and thought. 3, no, maybe 4. After Maria left, I ate one more. Warning bells rang in Rachel's head. 4, no, 5 almond-containing cookies. Given Ethan's allergy severity, this could be a fatal amount. At that moment, Ethan coughed lightly. "Are you okay?" Rachel quickly approached her son. "Yes, I'm okay. My throat just feels a little scratchy." Ethan looked like nothing was wrong, but Rachel noticed thin red spots appearing on his neck. "Ethan, I'll call the school right away and tell them you're staying home. Let's stay home today." Why?" "I feel fine." Rachel put her hand on her son's forehead. It felt like he might have a slight fever. His pulse also seemed a little fast. It might be early symptoms of anaphylactic shock. Around 10 in the morning, clear changes appeared on Ethan's face. His cheeks became red, and around his eyes became a little puffy. He began frequently touching his throat and started saying, "I feel kind of short of breath." Rachel looked for the EpiPen. In the medicine box, in her bag, in the kitchen drawer. When she found it, her heart filled with despair. The EpiPen had expired 3 months ago. She had intended to get a new prescription but had been putting it off due to being busy. "Mom." Ethan's voice was hoarse. "Something's wrong. I can't breathe." Rachel hugged her son. Ethan's breathing was clearly shallow and rapid. His skin was red and swollen, and hives were beginning to appear all over his body. This was undoubtedly the progression of anaphylactic shock. "Spit that out of your mouth right now," Rachel screamed. She thought Ethan might still have cookie crumbs in his mouth. "Mom, I'm scared." Ethan clung to his mother. His small hands were trembling. Rachel tried to maintain her composure, but her knowledge as a nurse was amplifying her fear instead. Anaphylactic shock progresses to a life-threatening condition within minutes to tens of minutes. Without an EpiPen now, she had to get him to the hospital as quickly as possible. "It's okay, Ethan. Mom is here with you. Let's go to the hospital right away." Rachel wrapped her son in a blanket and grabbed the car keys. While carrying Ethan down the stairs, she felt his breathing becoming even more difficult. "Mom, it hurts." Ethan's lips were beginning to turn bluish pale. While putting him in the car, Rachel called the emergency room on her cell phone. 8-year-old boy, severe nut allergy, symptoms of anaphylactic shock, heading there now. While driving, Rachel kept talking to Ethan desperately. It was to keep him conscious. "Ethan, can you hear Mom's voice? It's okay, we'll be at the hospital soon. The doctors will make you better right away." However, Ethan's responses from the back seat gradually became weaker. His face visible in the rearview mirror was becoming pale, and his breathing was becoming shallow. "Hang in there, Ethan. Let's sing with Mom. Let's sing your favorite Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star." Rachel began singing while holding back tears, but she couldn't hear Ethan's voice. When she stopped at a red light and looked back, her son's eyes were half closed. "Ethan. Stay awake. Look at Mom." At her voice, Ethan barely opened his eyes. She heard a faint voice saying, "Mom, thank you." When the hospital came within sight, Rachel drove up to the emergency entrance honking her horn. The medical team that had already been contacted was waiting. 8-year-old boy, nut allergy, anaphylactic shock. Rachel shouted while carrying her son. The doctors moved Ethan to a stretcher and immediately took him to the treatment room. Rachel tried to follow, but was stopped by a nurse. "Ma'am, please leave this to us. We're giving him the best treatment now." Just before the treatment room door closed, Rachel saw the attending physician's expression. Deep concern was etched on his face. She could tell that even this experienced doctor was taking Ethan's condition seriously. "Please be in time, please, be in time." Rachel collapsed into a chair in the hallway. From the treatment room came the alarm sounds of medical equipment and the urgent voices of doctors. "Blood pressure is dropping, heart rate is unstable, adrenaline, additional dose." Rachel clasped her hands together and prayed. For her son to be safe, for her carelessness to be forgiven. And her heart felt torn between anger and confusion toward her mother who had caused all this. 30 minutes later, the treatment room door opened. The attending physician came out with a tired expression. "Ma'am, we need to talk." The doctor's voice was heavy. It was very close. If we had been 10 minutes later, it would have been irreversible. He's now on a ventilator to assist his breathing, but he hasn't regained consciousness yet. Rachel was speechless. Her son's life had been saved, but the situation was still touch and go. And the reality that this terrifying situation had been caused by a present from her own mother left her devastated. Through the ICU window, Rachel gazed at her son connected to the ventilator. Ethan's small chest was moving up and down to the rhythm of the machine. An oxygen mask was attached to his face, and several 4 tubes were inserted into his arm. The life support monitors were beeping regularly. "Ma'am," Dr. Patel, the attending physician, approached. "Your son's condition is stabilizing. Fortunately, we were able to treat him before the oxygen supply to his brain was completely cut off. However, we still can't be completely at ease. The next 24 hours are critical. Rachel nodded while wiping away tears. Doctor, will my son be back to normal? We're doing our best. However, such severe anaphylactic shock is a rare case. For such an intense reaction to occur from typical nut allergies. The doctor tilted his head. Ma'am, could we have the cookies your son ate analyzed? Rachel entrusted a nurse with the cookie tin she had left at home. An hour later, the test results came out. Dr. Patel's expression was serious. This is not ordinary cookies. Large amounts of almond flour were used. The content per piece is more than 3 times that of commercial nut cookies. Furthermore, the doctor looked at the test report. Sleep-inducing drug components were also detected. A drug called diazepam. Sleep-inducing drugs. Rachel was astonished. Why would such a thing be? This is not accidental contamination. It was intentionally added. We need to contact the police. At that moment, Rachel's cell phone rang. The caller was her mother, Dorothy. Rachel answered the phone with trembling hands. Mom. Where have you been? Ethan, something terrible has happened to Ethan. Her mother's voice from the other end of the line sounded colder than usual. Oh, Rachel. You've already eaten the cookies. That was faster than expected. What are you talking about? Ethan is now in the ICU connected to a ventilator. Because of your cookies. There was silence for a while. Then Dorothy's next words shook Rachel's world to its foundation. $300,000. With that much I could pay off all my debts. What are you talking about? Rachel's voice was trembling. Life insurance. Ethan's life insurance. Michael secretly took it out without telling you. I'm the beneficiary. Rachel's head went blank. Her ex-husband Michael had taken out life insurance on her son. She had no idea about any of this. That's a lie, surely not, Mom. I was the victim of investment fraud, Dorothy's voice contained defiance. I was cheated out of $300,000. Debt collectors come every day. There's nowhere left to run. But with this insurance money. Rachel leaned against the wall. Had her own mother targeted her grandson's life? I consulted with Michael. I hesitated at first, but we had no other choice. Michael too, my ex-husband knew about this too. He's also drowning in debt. He can't keep up with gambling and credit card payments. We had agreed to split the insurance money. Rachel collapsed to her knees. That her beloved son's life had been targeted by her own mother and ex-husband for money. But, Mom, Ethan is your grandson. How could you do such a thing? I'm sorry for you, but I have to survive too. With an 8-year-old child, it would look like an accident, right? He already had the allergy. From the other end of the phone, a man's voice could be heard. Hang up quickly. The police might be wiretapping. It was Michael's voice. Mom, stop. It's not too late. Ethan is still alive. Oh, he's still alive. Surprise mixed into Dorothy's voice. I thought that amount would be certain. Michael, your calculations must have been wrong. Rachel gripped the phone. I'm calling the police. I will never forgive you. It's useless. There's no evidence. It's just a loving present from a grandmother. Who would believe that I tried to kill my 8-year-old grandson? At that moment, she could see police officers approaching through the ICU door. The doctor had reported it. Mom, the police are here. She could hear panicked voices on the other end of the phone. Michael, hurry. Let's run. The phone hung up. A police officer approached Rachel. Mrs. Miller, we'd like to speak with you about your son's case. Looking at the cookie analysis results, this is clearly intentional attempted poisoning. Rachel explained the situation in a trembling voice. Her mother's investment fraud, her ex-husband's debts, the existence of the life insurance, and the confession over the phone. We'll immediately issue a nationwide APB. They can't escape. 2 days later, Dorothy was arrested at Miami Airport. She was trying to flee the country. Michael was hiding in a motel but was arrested 3 days later. Police investigation revealed even more shocking facts. The life insurance had been secretly taken out by Michael 2 years ago when Rachel was busy with divorce proceedings. The monthly premiums were paid by Dorothy. The insurance amount was $300,000, with grandmother Dorothy as the beneficiary. This was premeditated, the detective explained. They may have been preparing this for 2 years. They tried to make it look like an accident by using your son's allergy. Rachel faced Dorothy in the detention center's visiting room. Her mother was handcuffed and wearing orange jail clothes. "Mom, why? How could you do this to your own grandson?" Dorothy wouldn't meet her eyes. "Money. It was all for money. You wouldn't understand, the fear of being chased by debt collectors. But Ethan is innocent. He's your grandson, your own flesh and blood." "Blood doesn't matter," Dorothy's eyes had a crazed light. "I have the right to live. My life is more important than an 8-year-old child's." Rachel stood up. "I will never think of you as my mother again. Do as you like. I'll be in prison for 15 years anyway. By the time I get out, you'll have forgotten me too." When leaving the visiting room, Rachel didn't look back. The lawyer waiting in the hallway said, "Michael is trying to pin all the blame on your mother. However, from the insurance beneficiary and the details of the plan, the conspiracy is clear. Both will face serious charges." Rachel returned to the hospital. Ethan in the ICU was still sleeping, but according to the doctor, his consciousness level was gradually improving. "Mom will always be by your side," Rachel whispered while holding her son's hand. "I won't let anyone hurt you ever again." "Absolutely not." In the hospital room where only the sound of monitors quietly echoed, Rachel made a vow. 3 months later, Ethan showed miraculous recovery. After severe anaphylactic shock, he remained unconscious for a while due to aftereffects, but thanks to the dedicated treatment of an excellent medical team, he returned almost completely to his original state. However, his allergic reactions had become more sensitive than before, requiring more careful dietary management. "Mom, today at school all my friends were worried about me," Ethan reported happily on the night he returned home from the hospital. The teacher also said, "I'm so glad you're safe." Rachel hugged her son. Since that terrible day, she couldn't take her eyes off Ethan for even a moment. She was constantly anxious even during work, and colleagues would sometimes check on him for her. The support from her colleagues at the hospital was Rachel's greatest comfort. Veteran nurse Carol said, "Family isn't just about blood relationships," and embraced Rachel's shoulders. The pediatric doctors also provided Ethan's regular checkups free of charge. What became her greatest emotional support was her neighbor, Sarah Johnson. She had come to check on Rachel and Ethan almost daily right after the incident. "Rachel, you two are not alone," Sarah said while bringing homemade soup. "I have children and grandchildren too, but family bonds are something you choose. Even if there are blood ties, they're meaningless without love. Conversely, even without blood connections, relationships where you truly care for each other are what real family is." The trial began 6 months later. Dorothy received a 15-year prison sentence for attempted murder in the first trial. In court, she maintained to the end that she was just in financial trouble and loved her grandson, but the evidence of premeditated crime was undeniable. Michael also received a 10-year sentence for conspiracy. However, he was assaulted by other inmates in prison and seriously injured. Child killers were the most despised criminals even within prison. After his release, he couldn't find steady employment due to his criminal record and eventually became homeless. Rachel had her final confrontation with Dorothy in court. Her mother was handcuffed and looked haggard. "Don't you have any regrets?" Rachel asked quietly. "I regret that I failed," Dorothy's answer was cold. "If I had succeeded, I would have been able to pay off my debts and live comfortably by now." Rachel sighed deeply. Was this person really her mother? Even with blood ties, their hearts were completely those of strangers. A year later, Rachel and Ethan had established a new life rhythm. Sarah was called Grandma Sarah and effectively played the role of grandmother. On weekends, they would go to the park together, she would read to Ethan, and sometimes she would make homemade cookies too. Of course, using only safe ingredients that were allergy-friendly. "I have a real grandma," Ethan smiled at Sarah. "Even though we don't share blood, our hearts are connected." Sarah answered with tears in her eyes. "That's right, Ethan. We are a chosen family. We're bound by bonds stronger than blood relationships." Rachel looked out the window and thought. That terrible incident had certainly changed their lives dramatically. However, it allowed them to learn what was truly important. Rather than the biological connection of blood relations, human relationships based on love and trust were the true bonds of family. Her colleagues at the hospital, neighbor Sarah, teachers at school and friends' families. They were the real family for Rachel and Ethan. She understood from her heart that relationships based on chosen love could sometimes be far stronger and deeper than blood ties. Ethan's laughter echoed through the room. It was a sound full of hope, announcing the beginning of a new family.